All right, hello everybody. It's 2 minutes after 1 o'clock. Sorry for being a bit late here. I'm just going to give it 20 seconds for everybody to join the webinar link. But I'll go ahead and start here. My name is Nick Altman, and I will apologize ahead of time. I'm feeling a little under the weather, so I will not have my video turned on. And if you hear me coughing once or twice, I apologize, but hopefully my words will come through loud and clear. But again, yeah, welcome. This is the HOA Information Resource Center's HOA Forum on self-managed versus professionally managed community associations in Colorado. My name is Nick Altman. I'm the HOA Information Officer with the Colorado Division of Real Estate. We also have David Donnelly and Amanda Lopez on the call, who will be helping out with moderating some of the chat questions. Hello, David. Hi, Amanda.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you guys for joining.
Awesome. And just a couple quick housekeeping items for all the attendees on the call today. Feel free, I think this is going to be a pretty fun topic to talk about, so feel free to pose your questions in the chat box on the bottom of the Zoom interface. If you prefer to remain anonymous, you can pose a question in the Q&A, and we can answer it that way as well. So, all right, let's get started here. All right, so just real quick, we have limitations with what we can do here in the HOA Center. I think most of you know what we can and cannot do, but we provide information to homeowners regarding their basic rights and responsibilities under Kiowa. We track and analyze complaints for inclusion in our annual report, which is presented to the state legislatures for consideration in their lawmaking. And also we have a registration mandates where we register HOAs in Colorado. What we're not able to do is provide mediation or arbitration, legal advice, or we're not able to actually investigate the complaints that we receive. Oops. Quick legal disclaimer. So the information in this presentation is offered for educational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. If you have any legal questions, please consult with a qualified attorney licensed in Colorado. And if for any reason you can't hear me, let me know, and I'll check my speakers here, microphone. But all right, so talking points today, just so you all know kind of what you're in for. I'm going to go over a couple definitions about like what is a self-managed HOA versus a professionally managed HOA. I have a few statistics I'd like to share with you all. I'm going to go over what are some of the common duties that community managers might do in your community. I'm going to talk a little bit about CAM licensing, or the previous program, and whether CAMs are licensed or regulated in the state of Colorado. I'm going to go into what does Colorado state law have to say, if anything, about CAMs. Amanda's going to go over a quick slide on the designated agents, as that term is defined in our registration mandate. And then finally, I'm happy to provide, I kind of have like an interview guide of sorts for board members. So if you're a board member and you're considering hiring a CAM, a community manager, I've prepared a list of a couple questions that you can take into a meeting that you could ask a potential CAM. Let me see if I can get a quick poll pulled up here. You should see a poll coming up on your screen. The question is, we're trying to understand our audience today. Are you a unit owner, a board member, a community association manager, or other? All right, let's see if I can get those results shared here. Looks like about half of you all are board members, followed by unit owners and a couple of community managers on this call as well. So that's awesome. So most of you all are board members. Cool. All right, so we'll start with some definitions here. So what exactly is a self-managed community? You know, there's no overarching definition, but essentially a self-managed community is one in which both the operational and administrative duties are handled by the elected volunteer board members. So you're not going to see a professional community manager in a self-managed community. This includes responsibilities like collecting assessments, communicating with homeowners, maintenance obligations, and quite a few other, basically anything else that HOA requires. So I think this model is more popular in smaller communities, one that has, you know, a small number of units, and also they don't have a lot of amenities or maintenance responsibilities. Basically, the volunteer, you know, it might be too much of a time commitment for the board members, and maybe these types of communities are just trying to save money on management costs. So that's your kind of bread and butter self-managed community. So what is a professionally managed community? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. It's one in which the HOA or the association hires an outside individual or company to manage the affairs of the community. And how is this individual or company paid? It's paid out of the association's operating fund or through the assessments that the HOA collects from its owners. So I'm sure most of you are well aware this is becoming an increasingly popular model in Colorado, not just in Colorado, but in other HOA dense states, you know, like Florida, California, even our neighboring states, Arizona, Nevada. So it's definitely becoming more and more popular to see CAMs managing communities. So what is a hybrid? Is there such a thing as a hybrid management model? And the answer is yes, of course there is. And this means, you know, there might be duties that are shared by both the volunteer board members and the professional manager. This is entirely negotiable. Usually it comes down to what the agreement is between the HOA and the CAM. For example, the HOA could take accounting duties, or maybe the board members want to handle site visits themselves, whereas they would like a professional manager to handle collections, for example. So that's what we like to kind of refer to as a hybrid management model. Some statistics that I was able to gather for you all. So this data is current as of yesterday. The Division of Real Estate, we currently have 8,228 active HOAs registered. We also collect certain information, and part of that information is whether the community is professionally managed or self-managed. So of that pie that you see there, about 80% they self-identify or they self-register. In their information, they say that they're professionally managed. That's about 80%, or 6,580. Whereas the remaining 20% claim that they're self-managed, or about 1,600 HOAs. So I'll mention this, you know, a little in a few slides from now, but the Division of Real Estate did have a CAM licensing program from 2015 to 2019, and when the program ended, we had about 2,600 CAM licenses, active CAM licenses. Of that 2,600, about 2,000 were individual licenses, and about 570 were entities or companies. So what types of duties might a CAM perform, or, you know, what could a board expect a CAM to help them out with in the community. Number one, billing, that's a big one. So issuing invoices or determining what do we want the invoice to look like, what information should be on it, how frequently are we collecting assessments? Is it quarterly, annually, monthly? A CAM might also engage in collections or assist the board with collections efforts. Hopefully all of you know that House Bill 1137 changed this. So if a board wants to send a delinquent owner, or refer them to a collections company, it has to be voted upon in an executive session. So a CAM might help with that process. CAM also likely helps the community prepare the annual budget, gathering contracts, identifying line items, asset, revenue, expenses, and preparing that budget for review consideration by the unit owners in the annual budget meeting. You might see some CAMs offer or draft or amend policies for board approval. Maybe your community doesn't have the required 9 governance policies that Kiowa currently sets forth. So they could come in and offer advice, on okay, do you have a conflict of interest policy, or what is your alternative dispute resolution policy? Do you have one in place? As a board member, you might not even know, or you might not have that policy. So they could come in and offer advice or guidance on drafting those policies. Managers will certainly organize and attend board meetings and annual meetings. If you're a board member, you probably know how much time that takes and effort to send out the notices and just gather people into one place where there's no time constraints, or people can attend the meetings. So that's an important function that CAMs perform. They also obtain bids for projects and insurance policies. They likely have good contacts, good connections in the HOA industry. So you can take advantage of their connections. They help with board elections, how to take votes, and how to safely or securely hold those votes. Covenant enforcement. So couple more items down here that goes with site visits. So they'll conduct site visits, and that takes time, that takes effort, and sometimes board members might not even be aware that there's a covenant violation happening in the community. Below that one was communication with owners. Owners ask great questions, and they're passionate about their community, and sometimes a board member might feel overwhelmed in answering those emails. They coordinate vendors, similar to obtaining bids. They help with what time are you going to, maybe a landscaping contractor has a site, a visit to look at a landscaping project, and a board member might be at work or unable to attend. So the CAM will fill in that role. Also, an important duty is managing the association bank accounts. So this has to be authorized by the board, but many CAMs, many managers today are authorized to make deposits, transfers, and even write checks on behalf of the association. So that's a very important role, one that definitely should not be taken lightly. They also might, get involved with preparing and sending out what's called status letters, which I'm sure many of you know what they are, but essentially they're kind of letters that go to the new owners in the community with outlining, are there any special assessments owed on the lot, or are there any transfer fees that the association is able to collect in order to transfer that property over to the new owner. Also, CAMs, they register with us, with DORA. So they take over that responsibility. And they will respond to owner requests for association records. So these are all tasks that take time and effort. All right, let's kind of get into CAM licensing here, or I put or lack thereof. So community managers used to be licensed in Colorado, but not anymore. Like I said, that was from January 1st, 2015. Excuse me, to June June 30th, 2019. Now that licensing program was it would have been renewed, but it was vetoed by the governor. And some things to consider, during that I wasn't here during the program, but the Division of Real Estate used to require credentialing, specific types of credentials, qualifying and continuing education requirements, similar to what you see in our broker or appraiser programs. There was a licensing examination that a applicant had to pass. There were approved education providers. Applicants had to go through a pretty rigorous background check, and there were insurance requirements that the division required these CAMs to provide or show proof of. So the specific bills, if you wanted to look more into this, House Bill 19-1212 would have renewed the licensing program, but that was vetoed. And more recently, if you're paying attention to the General Assembly and kind of what's happening in the HOA world, House Bill 22-1239 and House Bill 24-1078, excuse me, those were both bills that were introduced in the past couple of years that would have introduced or regulated community managers in Colorado. But both of those bills were lost in the General Assembly. All right, so so now that we know, CAMs are not licensed, they used to be, but they're not. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're not subject to any other laws, any other state laws. So that's what I'd like to get into right now. And Kiowa does have, it does have quite a lot to say about the relationship between an HOA and its managing agent. So managing agent is considered a community association manager. So I think these are really important sections. I always get complaints, inquiries, concerning these topics, and that's why I want to include this here for you all. So, I mean, number one, anytime a management company is changed in an HOA, or anytime an HOA changes the management company, it has to notify its unit owners within 90 days of the name of the new management company, if any, a valid physical address, and a telephone number for that company. And that has to be within 90 days of any change. And this is laid out specifically in 209.4 there that you see at the top. And this disclosure has to be I meant to say accompanied. Disclosure must be accompanied by posting on the HOA website, and also with a corresponding notice of the HOA's website sent out to the unit owners by first-class mail or email. Also, it could also be by just simply maintaining a literature table or binder at the HOA's principal place of business. That's generally understood. It could be where the association receives legal notices, or if so, provided in the management agreement, the management office. Or lastly, it could be disclosed through mail or personal delivery. And this is for the name of the new management company. What about, I hear all the time too, first of all, a lot of folks misunderstand who the HOA is or who the CAM is. A lot of the times people will confuse the HOA with the CAM, or they'll think that the CAM is their HOA. So I'm hoping that, I'm trying to drive this home as much as I can, but the HOA is a separate legal entity from the CAM, and the HOA has the authority and power to hire and terminate contracts with managing agents. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean, they can do it at any time, or maybe, the president just doesn't like the CAMs. They just don't like them for whatever reason. And they say, hey, you're fired, you're out of here. There has to be cause for the termination. So there has to be a specific cause that may have been breached in the contract. And that has to be laid out in writing, what the cause was. Not only that, but Kiowa provides that if a contract is subject to termination, that it shall also be subject to renegotiation. All right, so here's another one. So this one has to do with what information should be shared among members of the board. Well, for example, I mean, could the president just hold on to like an email thread from the manager regarding an architectural review decision, or maintenance, some kind of maintenance obligation? If they were emailing back and forth, and say maybe the secretary or another board member asked the president for this communication, can the president just say no and hold on to this information? Well, no. According to Kiowa, the answer is no. So 303 here, it says all members of the executive board shall have available to them all information related to the responsibilities and operations of the association obtained by any other member of the executive board. So Kiowa specifically mentions, really sorry about this cough, but it specifically mentions reports of detailed monthly expenditures, contracts to which the association's a party, and then copies of communications, reports, and opinions to and from any member of the executive board or any managing agent. So any opinion that the manager, the CAM, sends to a president, to any board member, has to be shared with all the other board members. This should hopefully be current practice in your community, but if not, certainly something that you'll want to take a look at and make sure that the community is complying with this law. And continuing in this section, so with regard to reserve funds, we get questions a lot about, all right, well, is there a reserve study law in Colorado, or what's the minimum amounts that has to be in our reserve account? There is no law, there is no specific Colorado law that would require an HOA to conduct a reserve study. There's no requirements as of the date of this presentation. That's not to say that it doesn't mention it. So what does Kiowa say exactly? Well, Kiowa does say that there has to be a policy about when an HOA will have a reserve study conducted. Also, it mentions specifically with regard to the how can we invest the money in the reserve account. Kiowa says, well, if the managing agent to the association is authorized to invest those funds, and you can usually determine this by reviewing the contract agreement. It'll literally say, so-and-so management company is authorized to invest the reserve funds. Well, then that managing agent becomes subject to the same standards set forth in the Colorado Nonprofit Corporation Act, 7/128/401 there, which includes acting in good faith. The managing agent must consider with the care that an ordinarily prudent person in a like position would exercise under similar circumstances, and also in a manner that the director or officer, and in this case, the nonprofit Kiowa actually specifically kind of substitutes the term officer for managing agent. So in a manner the director or managing agent reasonably believes to be in the best interest of the nonprofit corporation. So if you're a manager, if you're a CAM, if you're a manager, don't take this duty lightly. You are subject to additional duties per the law. Excuse me. All right, and I thought this was a good one. I felt like I wanted to mention this one because Kiowa provides or sets forth that any duty that the HOA extends to a managing agent must be set forth, laid out in writing in the bylaws of the association. So if you're in a community and your manager is doing collections or covenant enforcement, that has to be, according to section 306 here, it has to be put forth in the bylaws of your community. I think this is important because it allows the owners, the unit owners, the homeowners to really understand what can the community manager do? What are they allowed to do? What can they not do, importantly? Moving on here. Now this one, so this one, section, this is the same section, 306, sorry. This one just talks about, does the CAM have to get insurance? Like, do they have to secure insurance if they're going to handle money in the community? And the answer is yes, but only for certain size communities. So if an HOA, if your community has 30 or more units and delegates powers to a CAM regarding handling money, handling finances, then first of all, again, the bylaws have to require, it has to be shown in the bylaws that the CAM obtain fidelity insurance in the amount of at least $50,000 or any higher amount determined by the board. Also that the CAM maintain, this is very important, I think, the CAM has to maintain those funds and the accounts separate from any funds and accounts of any other community that CAM manages. They have to be distinct and separate. That's including reserve accounts, operating accounts, savings accounts. They cannot share those accounts with other communities. And then finally, that the CAM provides an annual accounting of HOA funds and a financial statement prepared and presented to the association by the CAM. Most of the time you will see CAMs using a CPA or public accountant, but Kiowa does not expressly require this. All right, so another one here. I also see a lot of times people asking or kind of concerned about an HOA or its CAM entering their unit to conduct maintenance. So I guess the question is, can a CAM enter my unit to conduct maintenance? And the answer depends on what they're conducting maintenance on. Is whatever the item considered a common element? For example, maybe you have a crawl space under your townhome that leads to a pipe that is connected to the boiler, the water heater that provides hot water to the entire community. According to Kiowa, a managing agent has a right of access through that unit owner's unit to the extent reasonably necessary to conduct maintenance or repair on that common element. And not only that, and is this good law? I don't know. I can't say for sure, but Kiowa doesn't specify. Okay, well, if the CAM is going to enter the owner's unit, do they need to provide notice, like a reasonable notice, or how long are the repairs going to take? Kiowa is silent on that, but it's important to know anyway that yes, the managing agent, it has a right to enter that unit to conduct maintenance on the common elements. And then it goes on to state that if in the course of repairing that common element, the managing agent inflicts damage somehow on the owner's unit, like, maybe, I don't know, maybe they broke a crawl space door or damaged the floor or something like that, then the CAM is liable for the cost of prompt repair. Got a couple more of these for you. So what about the CAM contract? Again, there's most of the time there's a written agreement between the community manager and the association, or the association's board of directors, executive board. So, excuse me. A lot of the times, I try and I hope that owners who are concerned about the CAM not doing their job, or they don't believe that they should be doing A while still doing B without also violating C or something like that. I always try and encourage folks to request the CAM contract from the board or the association and review that contract. That way they can really kind of get a good understanding of what did my board agree to when they hired this person or company. And if they don't like something, or a certain provision, or something that they don't like in the contract, they should attend their board meetings. They should go to the meetings. They should make their voice heard. Maybe that's in writing. Maybe you want to email your board and make your concerns heard. And that way board members can at least consider your concerns. But what I wrote here, okay, I'll say this to an owner, and then they'll reply back saying, well, they never let owners speak in the meetings, or I've never been to a meeting where they've discussed the CAM contract. Well, what I wrote here, the executive board does not need to openly discuss the contract in a board meeting, because this is actually one of the things that they can enter into an executive session for. So the board has the ability to enter into an executive session and discuss the managing agent's contract, and that's usually what they'll do. So I encourage you, or if an owner is concerned, to also try and run for the board themselves. That way they can be more involved in these discussions. So what about, meetings, voting, and proxies? Is a CAM able to determine or dictate what proxy we use as a board or as a community? Well, I mean, again, that's going to be laid out in the management agreements contract, what powers especially they have. But specifically with regard to state law here, Kiowa section 310 does grant power to a managing agent to reject or doubt the validity of the signature on the proxy form, or they have the ability to doubt the validity of the signatory's authority to sign for the unit owner. Again, this has to be authorized by the association. So the HOA has to permit the CAM to tabulate votes. But otherwise, other than that, they have pretty wide discretion in how they can look at these proxies for validity and make sure that they're validly signed, and that the correct owner or the proper owner is the authorized representative, authorized signer of that proxy form. So the same holds true for written ballots and any waivers or votes. So another important item to consider here. All right, and CAM contract is disclosable. So if an owner asks to take a look at the management agreement, section 317L says the association must maintain and produce to the owners any written contracts to which it's a party. I wrote upon a properly submitted request by an owner, because HOAs, they can still establish reasonable rules regarding properly submitted requests, that there has to be in writing, for example, or there's a certain time frame. But those contracts have to be disclosed to the owners. you can't say no. So you can't say no, I'm not going to give this to you. But if an owner asks for it, and if it's in accordance with your governing documents, if that's a properly submitted request, you have to show them that management agreement. All right, finally, last one with state law here. Let's see. So registration with DORA. We have our mandate here, 3833.3401. So this states that within 90 days, similar to the other name change notification, any HOA must notify the Division of Real Estate of any change in its management company or managing agent within 90 days. So that could be, a simple email, just, hey, we're changing our management company from A to B. That would probably suffice, but you do have to notify Division of Real Estate within 90 days of any change in managing agent. All right, so a lot of times I get questions like, hey, can we pay our board members? This might be if your community is considering, all right, we made the decision we don't need a community manager, we're going to try and save costs. Maybe we can pay our board members just, a little something to motivate them, or maybe we have an accountant, a board member who's an accountant, or maybe a lawyer, and we think that they can bring valuable skills to the board. So the answer, the Colorado Nonprofit Corporation Act does allow associations to compensate its board of directors. However, it has to be provided for in your governing documents. If your governing documents say no, board members may not be compensated, you cannot compensate your board members. Like I said, why might a community consider this? Well, to help with recruiting more qualified individuals to the board. You could save costs on hiring a managing agent. Also, maybe you just want to see if the community could be more professionally ran if we compensated our board members. Again, consider it's very important to consider if you do decide to pay your board members. There are certain insurance requirements that must be met. They may be subject to the business judgment rule if the HOA was ever sued. And also, you really would, it's advisable to take a look at the indemnification of board members, according to the Colorado Nonprofit Corporation Act. Okay, let's see here. Amanda's going to chat real quick about owner perspectives and CAM considerations. Amanda?
Yes, thank you, Nick. And again, thank you everybody for joining today. Yes, so we're going over the CAM considerations when it comes to a designated agent. As most of you know, and if not, I'll definitely go into that with you, what a DA or designated agent is. It is a contact person on behalf of the association, whether the association is self-managed or professionally managed. So when it comes to professionally managed HOAs that fall under CAM, so I do want to just really quick piggyback off of what Nick mentioned when it comes to notifying us when the CAM does change. Reason being, when it comes to registration and designated agent purposes, is because we want to know who the designated agent is for the association. Say there is a homeowner who needs to know who their contact person is on behalf of the association. So that's when they contact the either management company or the HOA itself, whether it's self-managed. It definitely helps out if that information is updated. And if there is a new management company that's replacing an old, I would love to know that too, because it's helpful for me to be able to help out our either homeowners or our new HOA registrants to identify who their point of contact is. When when a HOA homeowner or a new homeowner who is looking to live in an association, right, is wanting to know who their HOA is, who their contact person is. Do they live? I mean, is it part of a management company or is it self-managed? So how easy is it to locate that information, the information on the HOA, whether it's obtaining governing documents like the declaration and bylaws. So again, that falls into who do I contact, so again, it goes back to make sure that information is updated. That way we know who to contact, who to reach out to. Also, that I wanted to mention too is that goes into, reminders, renewing the association. When there's a CAM that's renewing an association, we need to know, has that information changed? Is there a new management company? Is it a management company maybe that changed their website or their email address? Let us know so that we can have that information on our public website so that our homeowners who are reaching out to us are able to see that. How do our owners and board members communicate with one another? The owners and the associate or the community association managers. So when it comes to that, how do they communicate with one another? Again, it falls into just providing the information that is needed to reach out. If a board member needs to reach out to an association manager, that information needs to be available. And when they do communicate, when board members and community association managers communicate on behalf of a homeowner, I've had so many different instances and scenarios where I have homeowners reach out to me and say, okay, well, I'm looking for these documents. However, I don't know who exactly to contact. I know that my HOA is professionally managed, but I don't know who to reach out to. Again, that information is definitely important to have available. And should the owners know who the DA is? I definitely think yes, 100% yes. They definitely need to know who their designated agent is. Just so, if there's questions, sometimes there's new homeowners that we have that are in a new association and they need to know, hey, I received this bill. I just don't know who to contact. I know I have to pay, but I don't know who to call. So it's important that information is updated on behalf of the CAM, whether it's, again, professionally managed or self-managed board members.
All right.
And that's it. Yes.
Yeah, no, thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on here. So I thought it'd be helpful to put together an interview guide for board members. Maybe you're on this call and you're a board member and you join the call because you're like, okay, maybe they can offer me some advice or things to look out for when talking to a prospective community manager or management company. What are some things that we should consider before signing the dotted line on the bottom of the contract, right? So I put together some questions here for you all, and we'll start with number one here. So how many Colorado homeowners associations have you managed in the past? So I think this one's pretty straightforward. I mean, this will give you a good idea of how long has this person or company been in the business? Are they familiar with the legislative landscape? Do they know how the laws have changed just in the past 5 years, 3 years? If you're one of the lucky ones that have, a really great CAM that's been around since, the 90s or the early 2000s, that they've seen a lot. They've seen a lot of changes and they know what the challenges are. But that's not to say, if they're brand new, that automatically disqualifies them from consideration. But it's a great question. I mean, how many HOAs have you managed in the past? Number two here, what is your knowledge of the Colorado Common Interest Ownership Act, Kiowa? These questions aren't meant to trip up a prospective CAM or kind of bash on CAMs, but I think it's important if you're trying to get into the business of managing community associations, you need to know what is Kiowa, like what does is there a state law that governs associations? What does it say? Are you able to talk about some of the important sections of Kiowa? For example, records requests or maintenance obligations. How about solar panels, public policy prohibitions? Can you ask questions or can you have a discussion about the law? It could be a red flag if they have no idea what you're talking about. What issues have you encountered managing previous communities? Were they resolved? If so, how were they resolved? There's probably a guarantee that if you manage a community, there will be an issue come up at some point or time. I think HOAs are probably the most difficult thing in the world to manage. So it could be a red flag if they immediately say no, like we're perfect, we're amazing, we've never had issues with communicating with homeowners or managing the records or books, monies and whatnot. I think it's very important to have an open dialogue, open discussion. What were those issues that you encountered, and how might that relate to our community of 7 units in the mountains or 500 units in Highlands Ranch, for example? And then if so, how did you solve them? How were they solved, or were they not solved? As a community manager, which items have you found to be your greatest expenses and why? Where, how do you spend money? Or I don't want to make it seem like, you need to let us know of all the affairs of your company, but rather, what can we as a board expect in terms of expenses so that we can properly plan? If you think you're going to be driving around a lot, spending a lot, if it's going to take a long time to drive through our community to conduct a site visit, for example, or what sort of hours are you going to keep as our manager? I think we need, the board needs to know that information, or it'd be helpful to understand kind of what the management company considers to be some of its highest expenses. What accounting software do you use? If you're going to do collections for us, what accounting software do you use, and what challenges have you encountered in using this kind of software? I, as the HOA information officer, I've seen many times, or I've read many inquiries, concerns that, like, hey, I'm up on my dues. Like I've looked at my statement, I've looked at my invoice, I've sent a check to the HOA or to the manager, but they continue to bill me, and I can't get a hold of anyone. I've tried calling the management office 20 times. I don't know who my board members are, but I continue to get billed. And not only that, but late fees and interest are being charged in my account. So how are you going to ensure that all your owners are aware of your billing methods, and who can they contact with concerns about billing? So I've seen some CAMs offer to help updating those policies. Again, this is probably something that both the HOA and the CAM should consult with qualified legal counsel on. But on that same hand, it is possible for an HOA to update their own governing documents, as long as they're aware of the law and that they're not in violation of any state law or its own governing documents. So, if you as the manager intend on creating these policies for our community, how are you going to ensure that this new policy is compliant with state law? Do you have your own in-house counsel that you rely on? And what is their experience with HOA law? By what method will you submit to the association your monthly records and reports? When can we expect to see that email in our inbox with the annual financial statements, or who are you going to email it to? Does your company have a records disposition policy? How are you going to ensure that any association records stored on your system will be secure? And who in your company will have authorized access to our confidential records, especially any confidential owner records? If you intend on opening an operating checking account with the association's bank, how are you going to obtain fidelity bond insurance? And do you know what those requirements are as set forth in Kiowa? What is your what is your opinion on engaging an attorney, just in general? How often do you consult with the community's legal counsel, and for what purpose? And who in your company is authorized to communicate with legal counsel, if anyone? And also, do you think it's important that they're engaged or that they're involved in the review process of our declaration amendments? Or do you think it's important that we should speak with an attorney on changing our bylaws or rules or regulations? What is the CAM's, or what is your opinion just on HOA attorneys in general? In terms of managing vendor contracts, how many bids do you intend on securing for each project? Do you have, is it the same business partner that you've been using? Do you have established connections already, or do you intend on obtaining maybe more than one, like maybe 3 or 4? Your relationships with your vendors, how will you ensure that such solicitation of bids is free from any possible conflict of interest that may be assumed from our owners or other board members? For example, taking kickbacks, or maybe you have a family member or a friend who is a landscaper or an accountant or something like that. Okay, so that was the board member guides. Real quick here, I wanted to just do a quick tutorial on the Colorado General Assembly website. Let me see if I can switch my screen over here real quick. I just had a couple things I wanted to mention to you all that I thought were important regarding the legislative session and what to look out for when you're on their website. So if I can change my screen here. All right, so I'm going to switch over to a web browser. Bear with me.
Hey, Nick, while you're doing that, if I can interject, this is David here. I just wanted to kind of point out a couple questions that were submitted in the Q&A that I think are important. In particular, one individual asked about and wanted to offer a clarification that it's actually the association that is responsible to make available the changes to the management company. And what that does really is it brings up a really important point. And that point is that the board is ultimately responsible for being done. Just like a landscaper, a community association management company is an agent. They're acting on behalf of the board. So if the management company is doing something improperly, and I hope that doesn't happen, and oftentimes it does not happen, but if it were to happen, the ultimate responsibility falls on the board. The board is the responsible party. So it's important for all of you board members, and from your poll alone earlier in this presentation, Nick, I think there were a lot of board members on this call. It's important that board members understand the right thing to do and understand what their contract with their management company says. If for instance, if it says that the management company is responsible for all communications with homeowners regarding violation notices, it's important for the board to know what communications are taking place, because it is the board that is ultimately responsible for the actions of their CAM, because remember, their CAM is an agent. I know that this can be a difficult and oftentimes a complex legal issue that's going on. However, it really is important for boards to make sure that they don't just wipe their hands clean saying, oh, that's what our management company's for. They take care of all of that, so deal with them. Because if your CAM is doing something wrong, if your CAM is making a mistake, if your CAM is enforcing different rules that are in fact might pertain to a different one of their clients, not your community, that it's important that you board members especially are aware of what's going on. So just it's not, I don't even like to necessarily refer to it as a word of caution, but the relationship between the board and the CAM is a partnership, and it's very important that they work hand in glove with one another to ensure that the rules, regulations, covenants, rights, and restrictions within your community are being enforced properly and fairly and not selectively. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, Nick. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Well, excuse me. While I have you, can you just confirm that Colorado General Assembly is showing up on your on the presentation screen? David?
Oops, sorry, I'm on mute. Yes, we can see the Colorado General Assembly's webpage right now. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So cool. Yeah. So I just wanted to show real quick what to look out for when you're maybe researching some HOA bills or what's going on in the legislature. I did have a sample bill here that I'm going to search. So if you go to bills, drop down, find a bill, and then I chose House Bill 19-1212, and this was recreate the CAM licensing program. So here it is, recreate Homeowners Association Community Manager Licensing. So you click on this, and a couple times I've seen inquiries where folks are just, they don't really understand how to look at a bill or what a bill means, or is it actual law compared to a lost bill. So if you know the bill number or the name of the bill and you make it to this screen, congratulations. That's already doing a lot. But once you get here, this offers a bill summary. This is not the actual language of the bill. Rather, it's a summary just offered by, I think it's the Colorado Office of Legislative Affairs. I think that's the name of it. But there's a summary here. It shows who the prime sponsors are, who introduced the bill. And if you scroll down, I think the most important thing is this area here. So status and what these words say down here. So you got introduced for this bill specifically. It was passed, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it became law. So just because it says passed doesn't necessitate new law. What still has to happen, if you see, like, maybe you don't see this, right? Maybe you just see passed. What still has to happen is the governor's signature. So that's when it officially becomes law. But if the governor doesn't sign it, or if he vetoes a bill, you'll probably see this did not become law. I'm not sure. There may be another term here. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but So you can see the history. What's helpful here is looking at the bill history. This was quite a comprehensive bill. There was a lot of debate and discussion. But if you go to the very bottom, you'll see when it was introduced in the House. You have the House and the Senate. You'll see its progress through the General Assembly, which committees it was referred to, what date the readings occurred, when it was introduced in the Senate. Then it makes its way. You can look at how a bill becomes a law in Colorado. They'll probably describe this process better than I can, but you'll see when the Speaker of the House signs it. Then finally, you'll see sent to the governor and awaiting governor's signature, or after the Senate president signs it. So then here, for example, you'll see the governor vetoed it, so it did not become a law. Another helpful tidbit here, I think, is if you click on View Recent Bill Text, it'll open up a PDF of the latest act or the language in the act. And before you even read this, or this is how I do it at least, before you even read any of this, I scroll to the very, very bottom and make sure that there's appropriate signatures or author, that it was actually signed into law. I've had folks send me acts or send me bills that are like, hey, why, my HOA is not doing this, or there should be a reserve study. Why isn't there a state reserve study? Well, if you go to the bottom, you'll see that it wasn't actually signed. It wasn't actually put into law. So as you see here, this one was vetoed, disapproved and vetoed by the governor. You typically, I think the governor's office releases veto statements for most of his bills. I'm not entirely sure, but if you go to the governor's website, you should most of the time be able to locate a statement prepared by his office on why this bill was vetoed. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to point out. Make sure that when you're researching bills that they were actually signed and became law. Real quick too, I wanted to give you a quick HOA, our website tutorial. A couple things to look out for when you're navigating our website. So if you do using Colorado Information and Resource Center, I have it bookmarked, but I'm just trying to demonstrate how to find us on your own accord. So if you do Colorado Information Resource Center, the first hit is fine. This is just our about section, but you know what? I'm going to take that back. That's not the best. The best way is to do the Colorado HOA in this second one here. So this goes to our landing page, our main homepage. The first thing I want to point out is where you can go to look at some legislative summaries that we prepared here. We are able to go back to 2022. So if you go near the bottom and do the accordion drop down for Kiowa local, state, and federal laws, you'll see 2024, 2023, and 2022 legislative updates. So if you click on one, we've written summaries on all the relevant laws that impact HOAs. Some of them are extremely relevant. For example, fire hardened building materials or procedural requirements for collections. Some of them maybe not so much, although there certainly is considerations. For example, obtaining a permit from the PUC to tow motor vehicles. But we felt that these are important bills that our stakeholders should become aware of, and we've created a resource page here where you can do a drop down. You can see what our summary is, and we also include a link here directly to the General Assembly website. That'll take you straight there. So that's our legislative update summary. Another quick thing, if you're interested in like a print off or a PDF download of the board member interview guide, we will post that on our website here in the next couple days into our FAQ section, which is underneath more about us, frequently asked questions for HOA homeowners, board members. If you click here, We're going to post those or post that document to this page. So you can come here, you should be able to open it up and save a PDF copy to your laptop and download it and print it off and take it into a meeting with you. I hope that's what you do. I mean, the reason I prepared the interview guide is because I've seen a couple things here in the HOA Center. I know what the complaints are and what people are concerned about. So I do hope that that's helpful for you board members. And with that, let me just see, should be sharing my PowerPoint again here. While I'm messing around with my screen, David, any other questions you see that could be answered?
Sure. In the chat, though, they've had some difficulties finding hybrid or CAMs, community association managers that are willing or able to consider a hybrid contract. And I think that maybe the best consideration in a scenario like that is to really identify what those specific issues that what are you looking for as a board? What are you looking for as a community in your management company in that type of situation? And the example I've responded to in the chat here is really, well, if you just need accounting services, then you might not need to go to a CAM for that. You could talk to a accountant who would be willing to send out bills, do accounts receivable, do accounts payable, things of that sort. Perhaps in a scenario like that, then it would also be, well, for the board to make a decision on violation notices and then send a communique to the accounting company, the accountant, to then send a demand notice out. So I think that there are some scenarios out there that will help find what you're looking for. It's also important to point out that there is no requirement that your CAM be, again, licensed, as Nick covered here, but also they don't even necessarily need to be located in the state of Colorado. Now, it's a matter of comfort for you and your board, for your community, on whether or not you want to be able to walk in and knock on an office door and chat with someone in person or not. But there are lots of companies that do work across all 50 states on these types of things, and so you might want to be able to, you might consider broadening that net if you're shopping for a CAM that and having some difficulties, especially because of this hybrid requirement or need for your community. Again, I think it's important for boards to really consider, what do we have funds for, and what do we need the most amount of assistance with? And that varies from community to community very much.
All right, perfect. Well, I'm just trying to sort through any other questions. Again, we'll post this to our YouTube page early next week, Monday or Tuesday, likely. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to email us at Dora_DRE_HOA inquiries at states.co.us. And with that, I think I'm gonna end this presentation, and I hope you all found this helpful. We're always open to feedback, so feel free to shoot us an email if there is something that you would like for us to present on 1 month. We're happy to consider that. And yeah, again, thank you all for joining, and I hope you have a great weekend. And go Broncos.